All righty. Well, I am super glad to be here. And I got to do a few shout outs because that's what we like to do. Also, Becky Jones is with us, and Theresa and Tom Hale, Pamela Onishi. So we are so glad you guys are with us. Please, if you have a prayer request, zip it our way. We're pretty good at it. So we would love to have an opportunity to pray for your prayer needs. I have a somewhat tiny short word, and I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to read a little bit to you. And this is out of the what translation is it, Les? It's the really cool one, and now all of a sudden I'm blanking on it. The Passion, yes. I'm in the Passion. I'm scooching my slide over there a little bit so I can see it. So this is in Matthew 14, and I'm going to read it to you, even though you could read it yourself on here, but I'm going to read it out loud. And it's about Jesus when he walked on the water. And it says, as soon as the people were fed, Jesus told his disciples to get into their boat and go to the other side of the lake while he stayed behind to dismiss the people. You know, I'd never really thought about that before, but I thought it was kind of interesting that the Jesus, the Son of God, told his disciples to go someplace else while he dismissed the people. It sounded kind of like the pastor at church that has to wait until everybody leaves. And after the crowds were dispersed, Jesus went up to the hills to pray. And as night fell, he was there praying alone with God. But the disciples, who were now in the middle of the lake, had run into some trouble, for their boat was being tossed by the high winds and heavy seas, and it was going this way and that, and they were terrified. And at about 4 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came to them walking on the water, walking on the waves. And when the disciples saw him walking on top of the water, they were terrified and screamed, "A ghost!" And then Jesus said, "Be brave and don't be afraid. I am here." And Peter, the one that eventually became the rock on which Jesus was going to build his church, or did build his church, cried out, "Lord, if it's really you, then have me join you on the water." And Jesus said, "Come and join me." So Peter steps out onto the water and he begins to walk towards Jesus. And I'm sure he was looking right at him. But then all of the sudden, he probably looked to the right, probably looked to the left, and all of a sudden he was overcome by this glimpse of all these high waves and the wind that was howling. And when he realized how high the waves were, he became frightened and he started to sink. And he yelled out, "Save me, Lord." And Jesus immediately stretched out his hand. Now, let's just go back to that, verse 29. In my mind, as I don't know if it's always been this way, whether just as a kid or even now as a grown-up, but when it says that he got kind of distracted there and he starts to sink, in my mind, it's a very slow sinking, because I would think that if I got distracted walking on water and lost my faith, I would go from 0 to 60 and I would be under the water, treading water. But it kind of just seems to me like maybe he just started sinking. And maybe he was like up to his knees and starting to panic. And then it got to his hips and he was really panicking. And Jesus stretched out his hand, lifted him up and said, "What little faith you have. Why would you let doubt win?" And I'm going to actually stop there. So I'm stopping that share and getting back to you. So one of the things that I think about, and I think what happened, is Peter got distracted. He's in the boat. They're tossed about. He's freaked out. Jesus has walked across the water to come and save them, which is what Jesus does for us. And Peter says, "If it's you, Lord," Peter was all in. "If it's you, Lord, I want to be out there with you. Call me out." And Jesus says, "Come on out." And he starts walking out there, but then he loses focus. He's not got his eyes on Jesus anymore. He's got his eyes on the water, the wind, the waves. He might have even looked back at the boat like, I wonder, can I reach back and get to the boat. He's thinking about everything else except the one who he should be focused on, and that is Jesus. This is a pretty simple message, folks. Jesus extends his hand. He says, come to me. I will take your hand, and just stay focused on me. And all this other stuff that's in our lives is just distraction. Doesn't matter whether it's wind, waves, sand, dirt, COVID, a bad haircut, no haircut, a surgery, cancer, a death. It does not matter what it is. Even your school, even good things, a ball game, the football team that you love. If that is your focus and you lose sight on Jesus, when the hard things hit you and you start to sink, you may not get out unless you turn your focus back to Jesus. So that's kind of my message. Now, I do have a cool story about this. Years ago, Leslie said that I taught for years, and I did. And I taught in a place called Point Hope, Alaska. And Point Hope is what I would like to say is as far as the east is from the west. I don't know how to do it on here, but that's the state of Alaska. And right here is Anchorage. This is the southeast that goes down by Canada, and then the Aleutians go off over this way. And way up here is Barrow. And over here is Point Hope and Nome. Well, I lived in Point Hope for 2 years. And on a clear day, you probably could see Russia from your backyard. We lived where the Bering Sea meets the Arctic Ocean. So a big spit of gravel comes out, and on one side is the Bering Sea, and on the next side is the Arctic Ocean. Pretty remote, pretty desolate. And they are a traditional whaling village. So every April, when the ocean is frozen solid and it starts to crack open, bowhead whales come through those cracks, and they're in the leads in the ocean. And because they are traditional native hunters, they are given a quota of whales that they can hunt, and they use every part of it, and they eat every part of it, and it feeds their villages. So quite some time ago, not while I was there, but one of the ladies told a story, and it reminds me of that sinking thing. And she had a great relationship with the Lord. Her name was Esther Frankson, and she had this fabulous relationship with Jesus. And she was out helping the men at whaling, and typically the women brought out big hot pots of soup, and they went out in snowmobiles with big basket sleds behind them, and they went to these places that were like 6 or 8 miles out on the ocean. You're just driving out on ice. It's fascinating, and I got to experience it. But when she was doing that, she was wearing a fur parka, so a big skin fur coat, boots. I mean, it's cold because the ocean is frozen solid, so it's really cold. And she and one of the gals were trying to do some cooking in that, and they had their pots and stuff, and they were walking, and there was a crack that came in the ice, and Esther stepped on the crack, and the crack opened up, and Esther fell through the ice. And so Esther is hanging on to the edge of the ice with a fur coat, and I'm not talking like a nice, cute little mink coat. I'm talking a head to almost ankles fur coat, sheepskin. And if you know about fur, when it gets wet, it gets heavy. So she is surely going to drown. And her friend that is with her, Susie, is yelling, oh my gosh, you're going to drown, you're going to drown. Oh my gosh, you're going to drown. And Esther is yelling at Susie, I am not going to drown. And she says, she cried out, Jesus, save me. And underneath her feet, she feels the palm of a hand. And this hand just lifted her like an elevator out of the ice. Susie got distracted. Esther did not get distracted. Esther fell in the ice, not because she wasn't focused on Jesus, because accidents happen, but she kept her focus, she kept her cool, and she cried out to the only one in that situation that could save her, because clearly Susie was no help at all. And Esther was literally, she said, lifted out. She said it was like one of those escalators that you ride on. She said it was just like, and out she came out of the ice. Don't lose your distraction. Don't get distracted. Don't lose your focus. Stay focused on Jesus. So that's my word for today. Keep your focus. Keep your eyes on him. I got my eyes on you.
Amen. That's
Amen.
a good word. And you know what? And that's just a kind of a reoccurring theme that we've had is don't spend all your time watching the news, because that would make you want to, I don't know, run out and give up.
Well, and don't spend all your time focused on what your problems are.
Come on.
Because sometimes our problems seem bigger than they really are. And again, if your back is hurting, if your legs are hurting, if your vision is bad, if you say, Jesus, I give this to you, and then you get on with your day and you help people and you do what Jesus wants you to do, he will reward your faith and he will touch you and heal you and lift you up from where you are.
Come on. And we have a prayer request.